Hello, my name is Daniel Demiscio, and I am a 15-year cabling technician. The reason for this video is an introduction of myself, as well as a history and evolution of data and voice cabling as I've understood it. Also, problems within the industry, frustrations, things that we've dealt with, environments that have changed, and new ideas and concepts that have come out and been offered by manufacturers, distributors, RCDDs, and cabling technicians alike. Again, my name is Daniel Demiscio, and I have 15 years in the data, voice, and cabling industry, especially with highlights in the fiber optics industry. I was always a bit of a techie in high school. I took 4 years of electronics, computer repair, and of course that was back in the 80s, mid-80s, graduated in 88. From there I went on into the Navy's nuclear submarine program, where I received extensive technical training in electronics and communications, as well as fiber optic towed array systems for sonar. I remember when I got out of the Navy and I had thought, my God, the training I received was incredible. The sky was really the limit. There was nowhere that I couldn't go. I had understanding of systems, and I had been trained down to component levels in technology. So when I first got out of the Navy, I was hired on to a company called Computer Cabling Contractors Corporation. They're out of San Marcos, California. And they seemed to be on the outside of the shell, a very well put together, organized company that had technical skill backing them. I was hired in as a foreman for the Cal State Fullerton project. I conducted a walkthrough with the owners of the company, and they had two foremen that were working there before me for 6 months. The project was 4 stories with the basement walker duct down in the bottom of the basement, and 20,000 Cat5 lines were pulled in total, as well as 5,000 fiber zip cord duplex multi-mode strands that had no connectors put on them. I was given 3 months to complete the project. I started my first job walk on the top floor. Now keep in mind, this is 1992 through 94. There were no classes, there were no schools of thought or education relating to the cabling industry. All emphasis was put into computer technology, architectural development of the chipsets of these computer systems, as well as the Cisco systems out. Now, the cabling technician was just kind of left behind. We were left in the dark to figure out how to interface these high-tech, high-speed communication devices, and quite frankly, they were new to everyone. The entire world was at the infancy of information technology and interfacing cabling. So as I walked the floors of Cal State Fullerton Library, I started on the 4th and I worked my way down in a logical sequence. What I observed shocked me. Even in 1994, there was common sense. And that's one of my biggest problems with the industry at that time, was that these technicians that were working and hired in the industry were hired by blind leaders, people who had never put their hands down on a punch-down tool. I mean, how many jacks did these project managers punch down before they hired these so-called experts? How many fiber connectors did they terminate? How many different types of styles did they get involved in? Where was the pride in the workplace? What I saw was horrific. There was a bundle, huge amount of cable, big bundle, coming out of the overhead, no minimum bend radius. It came off a ladder rack tray, dropped straight down on a perpendicular 90-degree angle, and the fiber zip cords were intertwined with the Cat5. There was no Cat5 little e, big E. That didn't exist then. It was a mess. Half the data lines were with the voice lines, and they were all terminated on a 110 wall mount filled frame. They were intertwined. there was no such thing as combing cable back then, as far as I could tell. The military had given me the skills necessary to not only have pride in my workplace and safety with my teammates around, but they taught me how to do a job well and how to do it right the first time. So I've always been one on challenges, and I agreed to take the position as lead foreman, on-site project manager for that particular project. And I was given 3 months to complete all 4 floors. 20,000 Cat 5 cables just for data. Then there were another 10 for voice. There were 5,000 fiber zip cords. Duplex. That means 10,000 connectors on each end. Anaerobic. There were methode baked on mound of epoxy. Polymer ferrules, which were totally new at the time. There were no true tried and tested methods of polishing down polymer ferrules versus the ceramic zircon. There was really never an introduction in the industry from stainless steel ferrules into the ceramic styles. And what I mean by that is no one told us, hey, you switch from a 15 micron on the methode to a 12 micron here. Yeah, true, you had the manufacturers like 3M. They make the hot melt product. A great product, by the way. I find high reliabilities in those, good construction, and durable product. Well suited for moisture, etc., etc. They were the first in the industry that I could see that really put together a good kit. It had an 8 micron. It was a one-step paper. You could air core with it. You could finish polish with it. But I walked onto a job, my first job in the industry, with a lot of these problems that I'm talking about. There were no solutions. Fibertron wasn't even CSC back then. It was Fibertron. They were located up in Anaheim, I believe, or Fullerton area, up on Orangethorpe. And they were one of the few people in the United States even that offered a class in fiber optic basic theory, anatomies, terminologies, hands-on approaches, which was critical at the time. But they were expensive. However, the training was extremely beneficial to myself. I was very proactive at a young age, even in the infancy of the industry. And I took as many classes as I could, and I found myself on this first job at Cal State Fullerton gathering distributor catalogs. It was something that no one had really ever done. There were a lot of followers in the industry and really no leaders, no innovative outside-the-box type thinkers. How can we get the job done? Not only aesthetically, get it done on time, get it done according to what the customer wanted. You always give the customer what they need, not what they want in customer service. And I found that interesting, that the blind were leading the blind. I had walked in on the biggest challenge of perhaps my life, bigger than qualifying in a nuclear submarine program, bigger than, I wasn't faced and I wasn't surrounded by teammates at that time. I was the guy that was pushing forward to get a job done, and I had no one that knew anything around me. There was lack of willingness, lack of responsibility versus accountability, the things I learned early in my life. Pride in the workplace. Pay attention to detail. Don't allow dissension amongst the ranks. If you have dissension on your team, the next thing you know, you have theft, you have gossip, which is receiving other people's stolen property, and it's just called dissension. No one needs that on a job site, and that's what I had. I had a core of individuals who were just not treated right. They weren't paid fairly. At the time, I was getting $11 an hour. That was top lead tech wage, and at least so I thought. But from the very gates of the information technology cabling industry, the problems were that I was taken advantage of. I was lied to, and I was left on my own to either sink or swim. And I always chose swim. You choose your team, don't ride the fence. If the ship goes down, start bailing out water, and you tread water until you can't do it anymore. These are the philosophies and the principles that this industry needed to adopt, and they hadn't done it, and it didn't look like it was ever going to get done. long and short of it, I completed my first project. I terminated 20,000 fiber connectors. Everything passed. I dressed and I fixed what I could. It was like redoing a whole job. I had 3 months and I completed the project. The company received their 10% retention at the end. As a matter of fact, the owner cruised up in a brand new convertible Corvette. It was yellow with a white top, and that was the day that he walked me through the job and gave me my check and said, you know, you didn't make the deadline on the 3 months. It doesn't look like you're getting your bonus. Unbelievable despair that I felt. I knew that I had succeeded. I knew that I had been a man of my word in this industry. With no support from the manufacturers, really no distributor support to speak of other than distributor catalogs, which don't knock it. Those are some of the most well-documented items of information and books that you could possibly read. If there aren't schools, then you go where the school is. You make the school happen through interest and perseverance, pushing through. Other people can't see my vision doesn't mean that I'm going to quit. I'm going to keep trying to perfect items and learn from mistakes as I go through this industry. I had decided that. So, as you can see, 1992 to 1994, nobody knew what the hell was going on in the industry. And it was very unfair and frustrating for not only the technician, but it was frustrating for the customer, more importantly, for the industry as a whole, for our country, because pride in the workplace had been lost. It truly didn't exist at the time. It was like anarchy on the job site. A lot of people talk about Category 3 and Category 4 and Category 5, and they say, oh, well, there was no Category 4. Well, guess what? There was a Category 4. It wasn't acknowledged by the IEEE or the TIA EIA industry, but I was around when it was RG62 ArcNet. It was this linear bus system that passed a token around to each computer, and that computer had to have the token's permission to move forward and exchange information. Then it moved to ThickNet. Of course, that was RG8, and that was a real broadband. It could punch the distance through without having to be repeated as often. That was the main thing on bus topologies, that repeaters. Of course, then you had impedance mismatches back in the day. Cat 5 wasn't even heard of. Nobody knew what category anything was, except for the people who designed the OSI and the IEEE board members and TIA members and such. But Category 3 came out, and it was the first introduction of twisted pair. You know, if you look at the old outside plant polyethylene type 89 cables that the Ma Bell used and they installed, they didn't have color codes. They didn't have standards, really. Even in 92 to 94, there were really, people were punching down a 25 pair, however the hell they wanted, on the block. There were tangles, there were stretches, there were splices, there were bad IDCs that were bent. People just truly didn't know what they were doing. So I do remember the categories coming out, and I do remember the introduction to twisted pair and how it replaced the aluminum shield. In my day, it was RS-232 in the Navy. We had RS-232 connections and handshakes, and there were the DB9, DB15, DB25 type connectors, DB37s, DB50s. And there were solder type, solder cup, there was crimp pin, a variety of different styles, D-sub shell clam shells and covers and the assemblies. They were big and bulky, but they were cool. And they got the job done, and they were reliable and rugged. And that's what I learned, and I focused my beginning fundamentals on IBM Type 1, long before IBM Type 2 came out. Fiber optics back in the day. I mean, look at the evolution of just fiber. You know, the way they used to fusion splice was get a little torch, and they'd have a stand, with little alligator arms and a magnifying glass, and they'd light up the torch, and they'd line up the two pieces of glass, and they'd put the torch in the middle right there, psh, and they'd wait until that glass melted, and then they'd secure it and do a little tensile test on it. I know this because I've seen it done. I learned a lot of the old ways from the old school people, the old school technicians, the ones that really laid the foundation for our industry today. So, interesting evolution. And the cost of aluminum shielding around any kind of cable extruded out for miles and miles and miles gets very expensive. So to twist the wires together, create an inductive and capacitive reactance, balanced through total impedance of distance and DC resistance, that was ingenious. The technology's been there for decades, for centuries. Well, maybe not centuries, but decades. And it revolutionized, and it's changed, and it forced a change at the precipice of the cabling technician. And just like any good game of chess, the pawn is only worth 1 point if you're taking scorecards. Well, so is the cabling technician in this industry, 1 point. But just like any good chess game, at the end of that game, the most valuable pieces are usually the pawns that are sitting on the board, minding their business, getting their job done, as menial as it is to other people that have confusion of success, such as how big is my house, or how many cars do I have, or bank accounts, and how much money, who am I dating, what does she or he look like, who gives a shit? The reality of it is that our industry suffered as a result of false pride of the upper people, the middle management even, that were hired in by these upper entrepreneurs that made investments with their money, saw a great opportunity in technology, but failed to trickle the knowledge, trickle the training programs and the funding down to make sure that this stuff got done and installed properly. Huge changes took place. I remember repairing computers, and I remember the 8080 architecture, the chipset. I studied assembly language, and at the time there were only 4 general purpose registers, AX through DX. And now look at just the 486 before the Pentium came out. 12 general purpose registers. Unbelievable. The space shuttle never stopped launching. They never stopped doing space missions to grow their crystals faster. Technology never slowed down for anybody. So a lot of mistakes have been made, a lot of evolutions and corrections have been made along the way, and really that's what this video's focus is about, is our industry and how we can better prevent disorganization, lack of proficiency and efficiency, responsibility and lack of accountability, and the understanding of that versus transparency in the upper levels. There can't be transparency on our level. No one is immune. Everyone needs to be accountable and care about our industry. We should all be forced to go to school. We should all be forced to get certified. And thank God the IBEW stepped up and made that happen. International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, I have spent most of my career with. I helped teach and laid a lot of the modern fundamentals for the methodologies used for fiber optic installation, such as fan-out kits, termination, ease of termination, narrowing down the minimum requirements as far as polishing paper. There's all these manufacturers. There's probably 20, 30, 40, 50 different manufacturers out there with fiber connectors, with data jacks, with voice jacks. And they're all competing to try and get little contractor, to purchase their products. But even they need understanding from our level, from the cabling technician's point of view. I worked with a guy named David Hankin. He was an electrical engineer, worked on the space shuttle program back in the very first space shuttle, Delta rocket program. I mean, this guy taught me a lot about professionalism and work. And one of the most profound things he said to me was, "Dan, do you know what makes a great engineer?" I said, "No, Ken." And he said, "A great technician." So see, the technician, somehow between his generation and ours in the 90s, was lost. It was considered a menial. Have you ever heard of the phrase, "Hey, even monkeys can pull a cable"? Well, if that were true, then I wouldn't have the success and the contacts that I have in the industry today, because monkeys can't pull cable. They might be able to pull it, but they can't terminate it properly on a small level. I mean, think about like a fiber strand. It's half Pull one of your hairs out sometime, look at it in the mirror out of your brush and look at it. How small the width is. When you're dealing with fiber optic, a strand of fiber optics, pure glass, it's concentrically shrouded by more glass, layers and layers and layers, and it's half the diameter of a brown human hair. Fascinating. That's what I work on. That's what I take pride in the small things. The small things do matter. I do sweat the small stuff, but only in my profession, not regular life, hopefully. So, Category 5 came out. Category 4 came out actually first, and it wasn't adopted by any organization. It didn't have the proper balance of twist per foot, the proper gauge, the proper type of insulative material. But the Taiwanese, there were companies like Pan Pacific that offered Category 4, and they advertised it in their catalogs. It just had a little bit more twist to it. That's what we would tell customers when they say, hey, you got any Cat 3, anything better than Cat 3? We're like, yeah, we got some Cat 4. Cat 4's the new stuff's got more twist in it. Better balance. See, nobody knew. Nobody really understood at the time total impedance and inductive capacitive reactance, parasitic capacitances. Only the engineers were thinking about that. Nobody ever handed it down to us. It was critical that I understood those calculations from electronics. There were no real standards. I remember showing up that everybody would do things their own way. They'd punch down any color they wanted, because that's how the olden people did it. The old school Ma Bell employees, phone company guys. Their outside plant was made of pulp paper, and it was wrapped around the bare insulated copper. And if you moved it too much, the copper would come springing out on you. These guys just they punch it all down on one end, or do wraparound terminals, whatever they did in the day, solder. And then they go to the other end, centone. And they do this all day long. We can't afford to do that at the rate and the speed that these systems need to go in at today. So we've come up with better, less frustrating methods called color codes. Thank God for the standards body. Thank God for the IBEW for enforcing it. The CSA. UL, I mean obviously, NEC. NFPA cared about even the insulation and how much halons are being released into the atmosphere when you do a vertical flame test on this plastic. Are you absorbing sulfuric acids? Are you absorbing hydrochloric type acids, halogens, etc., etc. But about the coaxes, that's what I worked on in 92, 91, 92. It was RG62AU. It was RG58, RG174, the real thin stuff for RF sniffer antennas, 179, which was a 75 ohm versus the 50 ohm 174. There was the IBM Type 1 shielded cable for the AS400 systems. That was a big name back then, AS400. And then right about that time, Cat 5 came out and it evolved, and we had to understand home runs versus bus topology. We had to understand more along the lines of crosstalk, near-in crosstalk, far-in crosstalk, versus just impedance or reflections, so much to say. We had new pieces of equipment, new technology, smaller electronics that we were dealing with, different operating systems, different storage medium systems. I've seen quite a bit in my day, and it's interesting. Look at the other connectors. They're still being used today. Military still uses the D-sub connectors because of their reliability. The N connectors, the F connectors. You have the twin-ax type connectors. You had the old Ma Bell color code transition from that to the new USOC for voice and TIA, EIA, A and B wiring. It's just everything has been new, and it's been an evolution. The industry has been loaded and filled ever since then, since the early 90s, with explosive, exponential growth. The customer got the raw end of the deal. The technician didn't even get treated and screwed as bad as the customer in the day. But then again, the customer really didn't know what to expect. Thousands or hundreds and thousands of lines are being pulled in. To be honest, I knew. And that's what bothered me as a technician. Maybe the customer didn't even know that it was supposed to, that it looked horrible. But I knew. And I made sure to involve evolution. Let's make it look better aesthetically. Let's clean up our trash as we work. Let's make sure safety measures are in place. So, biggest problems on the job, of course, were the lack of experience of the project managers. We'd go in and we'd pull in all this wire. There's different environments. There's plenum rated environments, which like in an attic of a house. If you go up there, the attic is one big plenum. It's like an air flow system that goes through. It's a common place where air is drawn from. It's a fire hazard. And we'd pull in the wrong type cable. We'd pull in PVC. And if you burn PVC, it releases hydrochloric acids and gases, and it's very irritating to people's lungs, I imagine. I've never had to go through that. And then we'd go in, and it was a lot of pointing fingers, and you're to blame, and you're to blame, and you're to blame, and you're to blame. We're all to blame. We have to start caring it as an industry. We have to keep that care going, and the work ethic. We have to want the industry to be better. A team is only as strong as its weakest link, and if the cabling technician is the weakest link, then we need to strengthen our union. We need to strengthen our brotherhood through organizations such as the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, organizations such as Innova Global, who are leaders in their industry with passive array optical systems, replacing copper wire. How revolutionary and innovative that concept is. Let's replace all the wires in the United States and go with 2 strands of fiber that replace an entire IDF, MDF he called it, telecommunications room, intermediate distribution frame, main distribution frame, telco room, telco closet. How many other different names does the phone company have for these same rooms? You can see the evolution, but the standards still need to be tightened as we go. I've punched down hundreds of thousands of wires in my day. I've terminated hundreds of thousands of jacks. My first job, as I said, I had 20,000 connectors I put on, certified, tested by myself. Imagine how many I've done since 1992. The varying styles between manufacturers, the varying distributors that ship the products to us. The various instructional classes and courses that these distributors offer. And that was another big deal. We'd go to these classes and the manufacturer would just hire the sales guy. And he'd stand around and he'd talk about this and that, and he'd throw out the buzzwords. And I picked up on the buzzwords because the buzzwords are important. Once I knew I could do the job, I had to have the buzzwords to sell it to the customer, to sound professional for my company as a representative. I had to care as a cabling technician to help increase the evolutionary speed of my industry. So reworking a job was frustrating. Having a distributor who claimed to be a professional and never punched down a single jack in his life was frustrating. It was unproductive. It was a lie. But we saw through that. We pushed through that, and we never gave up. Having to work for a project manager or a foreman that clearly didn't understand nearly as much as myself, who didn't have the work ethic or the willingness or the attention to detail or pride in the workplace that I had. Those were frustrating events. Those are the kind of things that must stop in middle management. The gap between the lowly cabling installer and a project manager is immense. Perhaps the greatest in the entire IT industry. Let's fill the gaps with proficiency. Let's fill the gaps with consideration and care and knowledge and hands-on experience and training in our workplace. Let's be the best that we can be in the United States. Let's stop putting these people in charge that don't know as much as other people, more qualified people. Let's face it, the customer is the only one that truly gets the raw end of the deal. The customer represents the nation. If that's the install that is made in the United States, then I would be ashamed to say I installed something that looked like crap. Let's start caring, people. While their gross profits increased through the 90s, early 90s, mid 90s, even all the way up to 2000, mine never really did, except through the union, except through my brotherhood. The non-union companies stole the profits from everyone. And they only hurt our nation as a whole. They hurt our unions as a whole. The only people that really tried to make an effort to go forward with training and bettering the technologies, bettering the installations and the knowledge levels, etc. Let's integrate the different systems training, was the Brotherhood of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. My locals, 441 in Orange County, California. We decided to stop the crap and start the training. Stop talking about it and let's just do it. Nike had it best, just do it. Don't talk about it, let's just get it done. That way we can make a small group of people have a large impact on the rest of the world. Margaret Mead said that. She said, never doubt that a small group of concerned citizens can make a difference. For indeed, we are the only ones that ever have. The wages weren't the hardest part. It was the insults, the patronizations, the belittling, the comments behind one's back, the two-faced, riding the fence, pretending to be my friend, pretending to be this guy's friend, and not teaching me, not caring about their jobs, the upper echelon. Just the money. Well, the lie's exposed. And we're moving on. The union gained momentum through the 90s and up to just recently. Our brotherhood has been weakened by the state of our nation, by the state of our economy, by the failures of others to group together, to care. My brotherhood has never stopped trying, never stopped caring. They adopted the TIA, EIA standards. They updated their training programs, their classrooms. They spent countless amounts of funds, of donations, and hard-earned monies that were invested wisely back into our training programs, into our retirement programs, annuities, our families. They taught pride in the workplace. I hadn't worked around a team as proficient. I hadn't felt safer than I had since I worked in the Navy on a nuclear submarine. Working around people that care, that have my back in a matter of death. In a moment of death, I knew that they would be there and they would know exactly what to do. Life isn't much different. Being on the job isn't much different. Any job is the same. We have to care the same amount, no matter what we're doing. We have to put the stigmas aside about success and how much money we make. We have to set aside the big house that we live in. We have to not care so much about that crap and start worrying and getting back to the fundamentals of this country that made us strong. The fundamentals that we're talking about and you're listening to right now. You know, electricians get one chance, one shot at things sometimes, and that's it. And they're dead. One mistake, and their buddy's dead. You see, it's the same way in low voltage. A lot of different inherent dangers occur, different environments, floating voltages, ground loops, working around high voltage splices, 12,000 volt splices. Sometimes we got to get in and terminate fiber in manholes, confined spaces. Oil refineries, N2S, gases that will dry clean your lungs in a matter of seconds, and all those around you, because you didn't care enough to pay attention to simple things. So let's care, let's start paying attention. Let's have pride in our work. Bring brotherhood, sisterhood back. help continue to change this industry. Past project positions I've held: Cal State Fullerton Library, I was a foreman, on-site project manager. Chevron El Segundo Oil Refinery was my second job. Dow Corning, Disneyland, I was the foreman, supervisor, on-site project manager, in charge of all the collapsible token ring outside plant installs. Grand Californian Hotel, Disney. Sierra Towers, Disney. Raging Waters Project, Ogden Parks. They owned all of Jazzland, New Orleans. They had parks in Greece. They had parks in any major city or state you go to. Raging Waters involved. I was the man on that project. Countless high schools, elementary schools, middle schools. Government projects through the United States Navy and other organizations such as Camp Pendleton, the VA Long Beach Hospital. I've worked at universities such as UCI, USC, community colleges, Orange Coast College, Santa Barbara Community College, Balboa Bay Club, data center build-outs, Wells Fargo, downtown San Diego, tallest building in San Diego. I built 3 data centers in that building alone. UCI, Lending Tree, Irvine, huge properties, facilities, bringing it all together, consolidating it. Proud to know that any distributor, any customer, any company could go in there and take a picture of it, and I could say, I helped with that project. I'm proud to say I helped with that project. To this day, you could walk in, and underneath all the crap and patch cords that these other guys after the fact put in carelessly, you could see my work. You could see my teammates' work. It's aesthetic, it's in line, it's linear, it's straight, it's electrically sound. You could tell the person that put that in had pride. What happened? So easy to walk that wide road. Let's try walking up the hard, rugged, narrow road once in a while, because that's where real success and victory comes from. Let's stop being the victims and let's choose to be the victors. Let's be the best we can be in the industry. Let's change the industry. Let's help change the industry by changing ourselves, having an effect on others, and changing the nation, changing the world. Let's bring it all together. It's the small things that do matter. Thank you for your time.